On December 29, 1890, the U.S. 7th Cavalry Regiment was led to disarm the Teton Sioux under the protection of Chief Spotted Elk. This attempt ended in an almost complete massacre of the natives and gave complete power to the white man. The native people of Wounded Knee were once thriving nomadic peoples of the plains called the Lakota. The Lakota, or Teton Sioux, is the name given to one of the three great tribes of the Sioux. The Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota resided together in the Great Plains until their defeat in the Great Sioux War. The tribe was forced onto reservations, prevented from hunting buffalo, and made to accept rationing from the government. In the few years before Wounded Knee, a great native prophet, Wovoka, told of a vision in which Jesus Christ himself returned to earth as one of their own. Wovoka claimed that the white settlers would disappear from the land, their ancestors would return as ghosts and show them to hunting grounds, the buffalo would return, and in order for the prophecy to come to light, the indigenous peoples were forced to perform the ghost dance and reject the ideals of the white man. This intimidated reservation police and the military, and they assumed that the movement was the prelude to an attack. This is where the violence of Wounded Knee began. The Indian Removal Act of 1830 was passed by President Andrew Jackson, which forced tribes east of the Mississippi to the western Indian territories. The act tore a hole in the lives of the Cherokee and the Choctaw, while also showing the immense power and authority of white expansion. The Indian Appropriations Act of 1851 created the reservation system and trapped natives within certain property lines in order for the surrounding land to be settled and taken. Years later, the Dawes Act of 1887 was passed, and that further split the tribe system into family plots of land. This is the point in which the ghost dance movement began to emerge. Prior to westward migration, natives were often involved in territory disputes between tribal groups. There were also issues with the planting and farming of the food in the tribes. The Great Plains are known for their barren soil and little rain that falls there. As a result of these issues and the introduction of horses, Great Plains tribes like the Sioux became nomadic hunters of buffalo. They became known as fearsome hunters and warriors. The Sioux were led by the famous Sitting Bull from 1867 to 1890, who had united the Sioux through their struggle within the Great Plains. He was greatly respected by all Sioux for his fearlessness, generosity, and wise mind. Sitting Bull allowed the Great Plains tribes to spread westward, much to the chagrin of white settlers looking to settle the land. On December 15, 1890, the chief was overwhelmed by officers who tried to arrest him. They were led to believe that Sitting Bull was a believer in the ghost dance movement and was going to strike against the white man. In the process of his struggle and the struggle of the Sioux villagers, the chief was shot in the head and killed. Tensions between the Sioux and the U.S. military forces increased, which drove villagers to join Chief Spotted Elk, later Bigfoot, and his band of Lakota. After Spotted Elk and his people were stopped by troopers and escorted to Wounded Knee Creek to make camp, the 350 Lakota were overwhelmed by 500 soldiers. After an attempt to disarm the Lakota that ended in resistance, the troopers attacked in full force. Hundreds of natives were mercilessly killed, over half being women and children. The Lakota tribe was devastated, and the military had been successful in their disarmament. In the long term, the Sitting Bull the massacre of Wounded Creek represent the end of the Indian Wars and the beginning of the end for native tribes. Out of fear, the Sioux and many other tribes decided to give up their beliefs and participate in whatever they were asked, just to survive. Their culture was whitewashed, and thousands of people turned to suicide and alcohol. In conclusion, westward expansion may have been beneficial for white industry and development, but it damaged an entire people in ways that can never be fixed. Native tribes have been utterly decimated